it certainly is a wonderful experience when you've received approval for a budget to build an application or to make a change within the environment, or perhaps you've just won the opportunity. It's a great day to celebrate. But there is a level of caution that needs to be exercised as you move forward with that engagement. Remember that 100 great engagements can all be erased with one bad engagement. And so today we're going to have a whiteboard discussion around a strategy, a concept, thoughts, things that you need to do to keep yourself kind of out of the fray and keep yourself so that you can have a successful project moving forward. So stay tuned and let's jump right to this. So let's go ahead and look at the whiteboard here on the screen. And of course, the very first thing we want to do is receive the money. I mean, this is by far the number one thing that we want. And it sounds like you've already received that money, so that's good. So the next thing we need to do is really look and pay attention to what the customer wants within that environment, right? So customer need is absolutely critical. And we have to be able to document that need somewhere, because we're going to use this as a reference moving forward. So we're going to have some sort of documentation that we have within the environment. And that documentation should have everything that defines expectations, schedule, and deliverables. Now, some of you may ask, well, what's the difference between an expectation and a deliverable? Well, the expectation is kind of that business process, what it is that you're doing from a business perspective to help this customer. Set and clear line kind of what that is quickly and decisively, so that you can make sure that you're listening to what they have to say and delivering down to the deliverables of specifically what the code or what the project is going to do. So a lot of time these deliverables may be milestones or tasks, right? And tasks, whatever it is, to kind of get that deliverable schedule. Now, once we have this put in place, we're in pretty good shape. Now we can accept the money and we begin the project. But we have to also remember that we want to be able to deliver here within the specific timeline. So we're going to have to establish some sort of schedule here that tells us when we're going to deliver. So this may be January, and this may be July. And then you want to align these milestones inside of these deliverables. Now, the tasks themselves will then support, that's a terrible little arrow there. The tasks themselves will support those milestones. So you want to make sure that you establish what those milestones look like, and make sure that you give yourself enough cushion in front and behind that date in the event that things do not go as planned. And they almost always go differently than we plan. So let's go ahead and put this as kind of number one here, is to provide that documentation. Number two is clearly to define what that schedule will look like. And then number three really is this deliverable section here, where we're going to define what it is that we're going to deliver. But it's not just this simple. So a lot of times organizations they'll just stop here and they'll say, well, this is enough, right? I've given you a schedule. I've given you what the expectation is. I understand what the statement of work is, and I'm good to go. Well, there's a lot more to it than that. So let's go ahead and continue. So driven from these expectations and documentation should be the down here, which really is the contract. The contract itself is kind of that I guess you would say, and this is gonna be a terrible drawing, but kind of, if you've ever driven on a mountain road, for example, you always have guardrails on the road itself. The contract, they're the guardrails. Now, why is that important? Because when it comes to setting expectations, these expectations are going to change, right? So we know for sure that change is going to occur. And in other videos, I talk about the essential need for change management within the scope of any project. But here, we need to establish these guardrails. And these guardrails are designed specifically to protect from scope creep. Okay, so scope creep is when the customer implements their change, right? So when change impedes the contract, so we go what we would call out of scope. This becomes a financial challenge because now I'm resetting everything within the organization to accommodate for the change. I cannot have that. If I have that, what will happen is the project will go way over budget and the timeline will get overinflated and I'll never be able to deliver. So I need to be able to take and use my contract, leverage my contract as the guardrails. So that is absolutely number 4, and it is a critical component that a lot of times organizations who deliver the technology or the change or whatever it is that they're working on, the technologists, they fail to do this. And this is a huge addition for them, right, that they can build that contract. So that contract will end up protecting them. The next thing that you need to kind of be aware of or kind of plan for is what is the cyber impact, right? What is the cyber impact? So there will be a cyber impact in the environment. So we want to make sure that whatever we're building, we're aware of what the cyber impact is. Now, what do I mean when I say cyber impact? Well, change, again, we want to be mindful of the change within the environment, okay, of the impact to cyber. So if the change impacts cyber, then we need to pull on compliance. So align yourself with compliance needed for the project. So what does that mean? In a compliance environment, we need to align kind of what the expectation is for the deliverable and be able to adjust based on compliance. And if you have what the compliance standard is, if you have that compliance standard clearly communicated, then the change needs to be measured against the cyber requirements. Now, cyber requirements in general tend to be a little difficult sometimes to navigate around for customer expectations. So you need to set the cyber content up as well. And the last thing, which is really addressing this guy here, change, is that you need to have change management in place. So we're going to put change management over here. We'll draw this guy as 5. And then the 6th thing we need to do is have change. So we'll just put it as 6. And now the most important thing about delivering and ultimately meeting this customer's need, right? This is really what we're trying to do, is meet the customer's need. Ultimately, what we have to do is communicate, okay? We have to communicate, and we have to do it regularly. And so what does that mean? That means controlling the narrative, okay? Consistent messaging, and patience. So all of these, controlling the narrative, consistent messaging, and patience, all have to do with our ability to communicate. Now, whether that's communicating on a, through an email message. It might be on a cell phone, just kind of checking in with everybody, right? Whatever that looks like, you need to be able to communicate on a regular basis. And with that communication, you'll then have a much better probability of being successful within the environment. Look, large change is difficult, but if you establish the right foundation in order to execute the change, I guarantee you that it will go much better. Look, will I accept money to do a job without the right functional requirements, without really defining the expectations and the deliverables? The answer is no. I can't accept it, because what it does is it puts me personally at risk that I can't deliver on what they're asking me and paying me to do. So there is an unspoken contract between individuals or organizations when you receive funding that they're going to get something out of it. And if I can't deliver based on setting the project up from the beginning to be successful, then it's much better to skip the project and move on to those that you can be successful.